Hi team, I hope you're all well. Today we are going to do my my August wrap up. Totally flaked then. I am meaning to get back to doing these as two separate videos, like one in the first half of the month and one at the beginning of the next month as recent reads, because I do read quite a lot and I hate doing these videos. They're actually like the videos I hate doing the most. So because I ramble and I'm rubbish at doing synopsis, I can't, you know, I really struggle to sort of condense information about a book. I just want to tell you all the information and I struggle at giving a very brief synopsis of a book. I'm working on it and I'm trying to do better, but when you've got 23 books you need to tell people about, it's difficult. You end up just rambling and it's hard. So I read 23 books in the month of August, just about. Like that last week I didn't read anything, and then in the last 2 days I read a book with the push of Bobby and Becca, so thanks guys. But I'll tell you about that one at the very end because that was the last book I read. So let's get to it, because obviously I read 23 books, which is quite a lot. I had a pretty good reading month in August, to be honest. I don't think I read all of my TBR, I'm not sure. I deviated for at least the first week. I didn't read the first week of books. I don't think any of them were on my TBR, so what can I say? I'm not sorry about it, to be perfectly honest. So I do have my phone because a lot of these were ebooks or audiobooks that I don't own. So I'm just going to tell you about my ratings. Cheeky ad pick. So the first book that I read was Cabin 2 by Amanda McKinnon, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This is the second book in the Steel Shadow Security series and I loved this book. So the first book, Cabin 1, I got on NetGalley actually. I got it from NetGalley, and then I decided to continue on with the series. These are all on Kindle Unlimited, so you can go and check them out if you want to. I highly recommend doing so. Basically this series follows a set of 4 brothers, Phoenix, Gunnar, Axel and Gabe. The dad, Duke, ran Steel Shadow Security and he died a year ago from a suspected heart attack, I think it was. However, Phoenix, the eldest brother, seems to think there's something sinister going on and that Duke was looking into something that maybe shouldn't have been, like a side job, and it's gotten him killed. So Phoenix is looking into that in the background, and we don't get a lot of that, to be perfectly honest, in the first book. It sort of only really kicks in, that side of the story, towards the end of the book. But my god, does that side of the story pack a punch. That will keep you going in this series, so I highly recommend picking it up on the sole basis of that alone. However, in the forefront of the stories you follow each of the brothers and a love interest. So in the first book we were following Gabe and his love interest. So this book, Cabin 2, we're following Axel and his love interest, Erica. Now Erica is kidnapped at the beginning of the book. We get, this is from dual perspective. So Erica's kidnapped at the beginning of the book. She doesn't know why she's kidnapped, but she's got some ideas of what's going on from her past, something that's coming back from her past to bite her in the ass. So however, Axel and one of his brothers are going through the forest at the time where she's been kidnapped. She's in a bunker, like under the ground, and I can't remember now because it was the beginning of the month, but for some reason he manages to find her. She ends up going back to the Steel Security she ends up going back to the Steel Security place. They've got like a massive place in the middle of the woods where they stay and where they live, and they've got like 3 cabins, hence the name Cabin 1, Cabin 2, Cabin 3. And she ends up staying in Cabin 2 and they end up looking after her and going through the motions of the story. This is what happened in Cabin 1 with Gage and his partner, and then same thing is happening now in Cabin 2 with Axel and Erica. It's a really good storyline. I really enjoy the romance, and the guys are really cool and I really enjoy them. They're all ex-Marines, so they came out of the Marines when the dad died so that they could continue on with his legacy, because Steel Shadow Security is like a multi-million-dollar company, so they're like really rich, but you just don't expect them to be, you know, the like proper Marine grunts, like, you know, they just want to be out in the field and doing what Marines do, and that's not what they get the chance to do. But it's just such a good storyline. But that Phoenix storyline going off in the background is just so imperative, and I implore you, if you're going to read this series, to read it in order. It's really important. So Cabin 1, Cabin 2, Cabin 3, and then go on to Phoenix, and then there's a book called Jagger, which I haven't read yet but I really want to, and then there's a new one coming out called Rider very soon. So I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend the series. If you haven't read it already, go check it out. Highly recommend. Smutty as well, so winner. Then I honestly completely forgot I read this. The irony of reading this in the month of August. I read Black Panther Volume 1. I gave this 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It was good. I think it's just because it's a story I didn't recognise. This isn't the story of the Black Panther, the film. So it's just a storyline I didn't recognise. It took me a little bit to get into it, but I gave it 3 stars. It was really, really good. If you know the story of Black Panther, this is following T'Challa, who is a king, and he basically is a superhero as well. Don't really know what else to tell you about that, but yeah, it doesn't follow on with the movie, which has Chadwick Boseman in, who sadly passed away in August. So yeah, I completely forgot I'd read this in the month of August. 3 stars for Black Panther Volume 1. Then I read Cabin 3, which is the 3rd in the series I've just been mentioning to you, and this one follows Gunnar and also his love interest Lexi, and I think this was my favourite one. I gave this one 5 stars as well. As I've gone through the series, the brothers have become my favourites, and each next brother has become my favourite brother. But I think out of all 4 of them, Gunnar's my favourite. He's such a tortured soul, and I love the tortured soul thing. You know, like, he doesn't think he's good enough for anybody, and he doesn't think that anybody should be given in the time of day, and things like that, and he should just be Marine Gun and doing his own thing, and he shouldn't be bogged down by anybody else or bogging anybody else down. And he's very much like that, proper tortured soul. And then Lexi comes in, and she's amazing. I love her as our female love interest, because she just takes no shit, and I love it, because Gunnar usually gets his own way because he's quite badass and fierce, but she just takes no shit, and I just love this duo, and I also love Gunnar. So yeah, highly recommend picking that one up. And also in the background, Phoenix's story continues. Can't tell you anything about Phoenix because in the first book there is a massive cliffhanger surrounding Phoenix, and it continues on within, like, throughout the books. So can't tell you anything about him because it would spoil the first book essentially. So 3 out of, no, sorry, I was looking at Cabin 3. 5 out of 5 stars for Cabin 3. Then I read You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. I loved this. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was so good. This is a YA about a young black girl who is struggling to figure out how she's going to be able to pay for college. The scholarships that she applied for, are they called scholarships? Yeah, the scholarships that she applied for haven't come through, and she's struggling to figure out how she's going to pay for it. Her parents died a few years previous. She's got a younger brother, and she lives with her grandparents, and they would sell the house so that she could go to college, but she doesn't want them to do that because it's the house that she's grown up in with her parents. She, you know, nostalgia value. Not only that, but she doesn't want her grandparents selling their house so that she can go to college. So she ends up running for prom queen, because prom king and queen end up getting school scholarships. So she runs for prom queen. The only thing is that Liz is queer, so she ends up falling for one of the other girls that's running for prom queen. And I just loved the concept of this book so much. I just thought it was fantastic. I loved all the elements in here, and I just thought it was great. It was such a good story. So good. 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Explorer by Catherine Rundell. This, thank you to Tandem and the publishers Bloomsbury Children for sending me a copy of this. I read this as part of the Tandem read along, and I had such a good time with it. It was a lot of fun. This, a lot of people, when I've put my description of this on Instagram for my picture, a lot of people have compared it to Lord of the Flies. Now, I haven't read Lord of the Flies, but I'm aware that it's to do with some schoolboys ending up stranded on an island. So I think there's some body dysmorphia mafia or something as well, and I don't know what else happens other than that, but this is similar to that. So 4 kids end up, I think it's 4 kids, end up stuck in the Amazon jungle when their plane crashes. The pilot dies and they end up stuck in the Amazon jungle. I think they're on the way home from a school trip or something, and the kids don't actually know each other. So one of them is very, very young, and they end up having to try and find their way home, essentially. They've obviously got to try and live in the wilderness of the Amazon. They've got to try and make themselves somewhere that they can stay, that's safe and obviously clean and protect themselves. They've also got to find food, and they end up coming across a guy who is an explorer who seems to be living in the jungle. Now, he doesn't want anybody to find out about the Amazon jungle because it's a beautiful, beautiful place, and he knows what people are like. When they start finding out about it, they'll end up coming to go and look at it, and then it will end up becoming, you know, it'll end up getting built on. It won't be as beautiful as it is. It'll just become a tourist attraction, and he doesn't want that for the Amazon jungle because it's absolutely beautiful. So he doesn't want that for that. However, Fred is obsessed with the Amazon jungle, and he really wants the world to know. So when he gets back home, he wants to tell everybody about what he's seen. However, the explorer is trying to convince him not to do that because of these reasons. So it's just a really good story. I gave it 3.5 stars. I didn't enjoy this as much as Rooftopper, which is another one of Catherine Rundell's books that I've read recently, but I did enjoy it. It was good. 3.5 stars I gave this one. So yeah, recommend this. This is a middle grade, so check it out. Then I read Bless Your Heart by Ashley Nicole. This I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. This is following a woman who moves to a new town. It's a very small town. It is a black community, and she moves to the small town. She's black herself. She moves to the small town. She's bought like a house there. She wants to move away from her parents, so she moves like completely across the country in the States, and she moves to this new town, and on the first day something happens. Oh, she passes out. She's not had any food or water first thing in the morning, so she passes out while she's at home trying to move new stuff in. So mum, who's helping her move in, takes her to go see the local doctor. Now, in this small community there are 2 doctors. There is a young doctor and there is an elderly doctor. She manages to see the young doctor, and they end up having a bit of a flirty flirt, and the receptionist and the nurse who works at the doctor's surgery end up telling the whole town that this woman's a floozy. She passed out because she's a drunk and she's a druggie, and she was flirting with the doctor. Now, this doctor is like the most eligible bachelor in town. Everybody wants to marry him and everybody wants to be his partner. So there is one woman who essentially, since she was like 16, it's the daughter of the elderly guy that runs like the doctor's surgery. Since she was 16, she's sort of been pegged to kind of be this younger doctor's, I can't remember the names of the characters, I'm really sorry, this younger doctor's partner, like to become his wife, and he's having none of it. He's not interested in her at all, but she's completely obsessed with him. She's totally convinced that they are going to get married, and I don't think she's necessarily, you know, like senile about it or anything, but she's just completely convinced because that's the way she's been brought up to believe that that is the way things are going to be. Anyway, the doctor ends up really liking our female character. She sort of doesn't want to get involved with anybody, but she kind of fancies him. And then obviously the rumour mill starts, and people immediately sort of take a disliking to her because she's been deemed a druggie and an alcoholic, and she's a floozy because she was all over the new doctor. So actions are taken against the 2 women that have shared this information because A, it's wrong, and B, you shouldn't be sharing clients' personal information anyway. And the story just goes on from there. They end up building a relationship, and they have to fight this like entire town essentially because they don't like her. And she ends up with a couple of people on side, like the older guy that runs the local corner store, and one of the women that works in the diner, because they don't listen to this shit. They're older, they don't care, they take you at face value, and it's just a really good story. I really enjoyed it. We read this for the Black Romance Club, and I just really enjoyed it. It was such a good time. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It really gives you an insight into small communities as well, just in general, how they can, you know, once the rumour mill starts, it can be really difficult to kind of shut it off and put an end to any shitty rumours that aren't true. So Bless Your Heart's kind of deemed as a, you know, very nice fuck you. Oh, bless your heart. Really? That's what you think? Bless your heart. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend picking it up. Then I read Phoenix by Amanda McKinnon. I was getting all the Amanda McKinnon books in August. Apparently I didn't carry on because I didn't get to Jagger. But I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars as well. Obviously this one is following the eldest brother Phoenix. I cannot tell you, I can tell you a little bit. Can't tell you a great deal about this one because it will spoil Phoenix's story from the beginning. This is a standalone, but I would highly, highly, highly recommend reading Cabin 1, 2 and 3 before you pick this one up, because essentially this follows Phoenix post Cabin 3. So his entire story started in Cabin 1, and this follows Phoenix specifically as his story separately, going seeing a therapist for the things that have happened during Cabin 1, 2 and 3, and it's his and Rose, his doctor, their story. So it's really good. I can't really tell you a great deal other than that because of what happens in Cabin 1, 2 and 3. It would spoil it, but I highly recommend picking this series up. It's just so good, and I cannot wait to continue with it with Jagger and Ryder. I'm really hoping that at some point she might make one of them queer, but we'll see. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars, highly recommend. Then I read Fracture Me by Tahira Mafi. This is a bind up of 2 novellas from the Shatter Me series. So it's a bind up of Destroy Me and Fracture Me. Destroy Me is book 1.5, Fracture Me is book 2.5, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars actually. This is the lowest rated book that I've given in this series so far. The reason being that this is following Adam. So these novellas are following other characters from the series. So essentially the Shatter Me series, very briefly, is following Juliet, who is a young girl. I think she's about 16, 17, 18. I think she's 18, and she basically has this power in her that if you touch her you will die. Now she tries to protect people around her as well as herself, because she doesn't want to do this to people. She doesn't want to be a weapon, but she tries to protect herself as much as she possibly can by wearing, like, you know, as much clothing as she possibly can, and gloves as well, to try and protect people and also herself from killing people. She doesn't want to do this, and she ended up being sent to an asylum, basically abandoned by her parents when she was younger because she accidentally killed a little boy in a supermarket. And she gets sent to an asylum, and this is essentially where she's brought up. Now we also follow Warner, who is a boy the same age as Juliet, but he is part of the re-establishment, who are the bad guys. Warner's dad runs the re-establishment, but Warner is the face of the re-establishment, and he wants to kind of use Juliet as a weapon. So he gets her out of the asylum and takes her in at the re-establishment, but she wants nothing to do with it, and romance ensues. And then there's also a boy called Adam, same age again, but he also ends up with a semi-romance. There's kind of like a love triangle going on here, and he wants to help Juliet. Now there is one that I would prefer she be with, but I am indifferent to this. I don't mind a love triangle like this because I'm not invested in a relationship one way or another. Similarly with Clockwork, similarly with the Infernal Devices, I'm not invested one way or another. I hate love triangles when there is already an invested relationship and you're just throwing it in to cause chaos, because it's absolutely pointless. It's a waste of time. I hate it. But I don't mind a love triangle where there's not already an invested relationship, if that makes sense, and you could go either way on which relationship you want. Now, anyway, my point is that these short novellas, so the first one, Destroy Me, followed Warner, and I really enjoyed that one, but this second one, Fracture Me, is following Adam. Now the reason why I've not enjoyed this one as much is because Warner's novella basically followed, Warner's novella essentially followed a scene where he was alone. So we got a lot of him alone thinking about Juliet, and then we got a scene of him being out visiting one of the towns, and something happens and we get him, like, his side of it, but then he sees Juliet, and then later on in the second book you get Juliet's side of that actual scene happening, and I've really enjoyed that crossover. I just thought it was fantastic. However, in Fracture Me, the scene that we get with Adam, so the storyline that we're following with Adam, the entire time he's with Juliet until the very, very end of his storyline, and it's only at that point that it becomes interesting, because he's away from Juliet. We've already had this storyline from Juliet's point of view, so I feel like I'm just rereading the story again, but just from a different character's perspective. But it's the exact same storyline, because you're seeing the exact same thing happen that you've just read happen in the second book. Does that make any sense? I hope that makes sense, as if somebody's going to sit here and go, yeah, that makes sense. Shit myself if somebody said that out the camera. So yeah, I didn't enjoy it as much as I didn't enjoy this as much as Warner's side of things. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was just okay. It was fine. Next, I read The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Thank you again to Tandem for sending me this, and to Hot Escape for sending me this as well. This is following Kara, who is a young girl, and this is in a world where an eccentric genius, Adam Bosch, has cracked the multiverse and discovered a way to travel to parallel Earths. There's just one problem: no one can visit an Earth where the counterpart is still alive. So Kara is dead on, out of 380 realities, she's dead on all but 8 of them. So she can travel to all but 8 of the realities, and basically one day she goes to one of the other multiverses, but when she gets there, one of the other realities, but when she gets there, it turns out her doppelganger is still alive. Now usually this would kill a traverser, but she manages to make it. She ends up recovering with the help of someone on the other side, and then she manages to make her way back. Now a lot happens in this other reality, where things are very, very different in this other reality to what they are in all the other realities, and she's unsure why that is, and she has to kind of figure that out. There's a lot going on in this, and I can't really explain it too much to you, because it is quite confusing with the doppelgangers and the multiverses and the traversing. There is a lot going on in here, but I really, really, really enjoyed this. It was very, very good. 4 out of 5 stars. It was very, very good indeed. So then I read The Phone Box at the Edge of the World by Laura Imaya Messina. This is following a character called Yui, who loses her mother and her daughter in a tsunami. Then she hears about a man who has a phone box. This is kind of like a little bit of a legend, if you like, but he has a phone box, and essentially you can speak to the dead via the phone box. This was like a very thought-provoking and meaningful, mesmerizing sort of tale, and it was very beautifully done. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I listened to the audiobook and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. 3 out of 5 stars is pretty good. I did enjoy it. It's just not my kind of thing really, which is a shame, but I think a lot of other people will enjoy this. But yeah, it was heart-wrenching and heartwarming at the same time. It was just really nicely done, and I just thought it was quite a good book. So 3 out of 5 stars for The Phone Box at the Edge of the World. Then I read Punching the Air by Ibiza Boy and Yusuf Salam. This book was beautiful. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. So basically this is a book told in verse. Yusuf Salam is one of the exonerated 5 from the Central Park jogger case from back in I think it's 1989 when it happened. Basically 5 boys were accused of raping and murdering a woman. They were sent to prison. They were falsely accused. They were sent to prison, and 4 of them were minors, so they were sent to juvie. One of them was just 16. And he ended up going to, you know, like a proper adult prison. The 4 juvie boys, the 4 younger boys, ended up getting out in obviously a lot shorter time than the elder boy did. He struggled a lot in prison, and he went through a lot, and eventually the guy that actually raped and murdered the woman ended up coming forward, because he'd been in prison for a while anyway. He was already in there for several lifetimes, and he ended up coming forward, and the boys were all exonerated essentially. So, well, obviously they're men now, but they were all exonerated, and Yusuf Salam is one of these boys, now a man, obviously. So he's teamed up with Ibiza Boy to come together and do this book, Punching the Air, which is following a young boy called Amal, who is accused of beating up a white boy in a park, basically, and it turns out that's not the way it went down. He is sent to prison, he's sent to juvie for this, and we're following Amal going through all of this. We follow him through his court case, then we follow him during his time in juvie, but we also follow him as an artist. So he likes to draw and paint, but he also likes to write poetry as well, and it's just a very, I don't really know the words to say for this book. It's captivating, it's heartbreaking to know that Yusuf Salam has had a say in this and how it would feel to have this happen to you. And yeah, there's just a lot of things going on in here, and I think, like I say, to have Yusuf's sort of hand in this, it's a lot, because I have watched the TV series as well, When They See Us, I think it's called. I'll show a picture of it here, but I've watched the TV series as well. I highly recommend going and watching this if you haven't done so already. But that basically it kind of recreates what happened to the boys, and how I think it's like 5 episodes or something, and how they ended up going from being just 5 boys in a park to being accused of rape and murder of a woman. So yeah, I would highly recommend going picking that up, and then I recommend picking up Punch in the Air. It's very, very good, told in verse. I know not a lot of people read books that are told in verse, but it's very well done, and I do highly recommend picking this one up. It's so, so good. It came out on the 1st of September, so do go and check it out, because it's amazing and you won't be disappointed. Then I read Unsportsmanlike Conduct, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This is by Shana Swenson. I got this from NetGalley, and I was really excited about this one. This following Travis, whose brother has a gambling problem. He's been asking Travis for some help to try and get some money back to the people who he's been borrowing money from. These people are bad people, you know, like gangsters and stuff. And Travis has refused to help his little brother, Tucker. Now Tucker has been kidnapped, and Travis is having to throw his games. Now he's been benched because somebody approached him. One of his other teammates approached him about throwing his games, and there was a showdown. And he's been benched for that, not because he's being accused of throwing his games. So Travis has been benched for 2 weeks. He goes back, does he go back to his hometown, I think, and he ends up bumping into a girl who he used to go to school with. He doesn't recognise her because she's very, very different now. She was like the ugly duckling in school. She was a bigger girl. She had an obsession with Travis though, and she's now, you know, like skinny. She's turned into a beautiful swan and all this lot, and he's got the hots for her, and he bumps into her into a bar. Her car is broken down further up the road. He bumps into her into the bar, and in a bar, and she is the assistant DA now. So she is sort of like engaged to like this really high-flying guy, but it turns out that he's cheating on her, and she ends up bumping into Travis. She's absolutely like fucking mortified to bump into him because she doesn't want to see him, because he broke her heart in school and all this lot, and a lot happens. They end up getting shot at on the street when they try to fix her car. Basically she's got a flat tire, so she's phone breakdown, and he turns up, but she's got a flat tire, and Travis is like, for fuck's sake, I could have fixed that for you. So the breakdown guy, there ends up being a shootout on the street. Something happens, and they end up fleeing and running away. Now she's investigating the mobs and the gangsters that are involved with the guy that's kidnapped Travis's brother. She doesn't know about Travis's brother's kidnapping, because obviously Travis can't go to the police. He just has to throw these games. So there's a lot going on here. However, this side, obviously it's a romance that's got all this going on in it, and I really enjoyed this thriller type element. However, there's a lot that happened in this book, and I nearly DNF'd it. Basically the reason why I nearly DNF'd it is because Travis is a fucking pig. The way he speaks to, I can't even remember her name now, but the way he speaks to her is fucking disgusting. It's just awful, and I got really, really sick of it. It got to a point where it almost became like sexual harassment. I went on a massive rant about this in one of my vlogs. I'll leave a link to it down below because I can't bother going on about it again, but I'll leave a link to the vlog down below if you want to go and check it out. I did like a whole spoiler section in the vlog. But basically it's borderline sexual harassment. So I understand flirty banter 100%, and sometimes I understand pushing your boundaries with it a little bit, but there is a point at which a girl says no and you should back off. Do you know what I mean? So he just doesn't. Like, he doesn't actually sexually assault her or anything like that, but there is a point at which, for example, this is a spoiler, but there is a point at which they get to this cabin that they've run away to. She's sleeping in the bed, he's sleeping on the sofa. She wakes up in the morning wrapped up in his arms, he's just in his boxers, and he's gotten in bed with her in the night, and obviously he's turned on, morning glory and all this lot, and he's like groping her. Like, he literally, she's like, Travis, what the fuck? And he gropes her harder, like he's got his hand on her tit and everything, and he gropes her, and she's like, Travis, this is fucking sexual assault, what the fuck are you doing? Anyway, the problem with this is, it's in itself, there is an internal conflict going on with our female MC. She actually is really into him, but she's completely in love with him, and she wants to protect herself, so she's like, no. She puts her boundaries down, and she's like, no. But the internal conflict is that, yes, she wants to sleep with him. So this is where it sort of becomes a bit of a grey area then, because obviously sexual assault is sexual assault. If a woman says no, you need to back the fuck off. However, you can see it's written all over her face, and her internal conflict is yes, but she's saying no. If that makes any sense, it's very, very, there's a big grey area. Anyway, that aside, the whole thriller element of this, with Tucker being kidnapped and everything, kind of dies down very, very quickly. It ends very, very quickly in the middle of the book, and then you've got another 100 pages to go of the book. This is a short book, it's like 270 pages long, so you've got another 100 pages to go of the book, and that's basically then just him then going back to normal, him playing football, and their relationship kind of becoming a relationship, and it's just 100 pages of that. And I felt like that last 100 pages was about 300 pages long. I enjoyed it towards the end. I enjoyed Travis away from her, weirdly enough. He becomes like a predator, almost like a barbarian, you know, like a proper, I don't know, just really practically humping a leg, disgusting type pig of a man when he's around her, and it just knocks me a bit sick. But when he's not around her, and he's just around his teammates, and he's around like his teammates' kids, and they're hanging out, you know, like family type teammate things that they do, he's really cute and really cool, and I really like him. It's almost like he's got a split personality, and he just becomes a complete animal when he's around her. Just knocked me a bit sick. Anyway, I am looking forward to carrying on with the series. I do want to read the second in the series, which comes out in September. It's following one of the other characters, and then the female sort of CEO of the team. So I am looking forward to that, but I am a little bit nervous with what's going to happen with that story because of what happens at the end of Unsportsmanlike Conduct. So 3 out of 5 stars. I know that was a bit of a messy review, but there was a lot happening, and I just couldn't fully get my head around whether or not I liked this book. I felt like I was being a prude in some places, and I think just for me, it just made me feel uncomfortable. And I think obviously that's not okay, but as far as I'm not being a prude because it made me uncomfortable, so that it's okay in that sense, if that makes any sense. Like, there's being a prude and being like, oh my god, there's smut in this book, what the fuck, I wasn't expecting that, it's disgusting. That's just fucking stupid. Like, think about what you're picking up before you pick it up, if that makes any sense. But at the same time, I'm obviously here for the smut. If you've been on this channel for a while, I love smut. I love reading smutty books. But for me, there is a line between flirty banter and sexual assault. If she's saying no, even if it's written on her face that she wants to do it, just if she's saying no, it's a no. Stop doing what you're doing. Like, back off. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a prude, I don't know, but it made me uncomfortable personally. So there was a point at which I was DNFing this, and then I continued on with it because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm glad I continued on with it. It died down, obviously, like I say, towards the end, but yeah, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. Then I read Liquor and Laundry, which is by Tasha L. Harrison. This is an erotic novella, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This is following 2 characters, and it just gets straight into the story. This is following a girl and a boy who had a sexual encounter the year before, and he plays football. He is a well-known football player, and he's not been able to stop thinking about her since it's happened. She's had a massive crush on him for the longest time, but she was like, oh my god, I was fucking arsehole, and I gave him like a BJ and all this lot. That's literally what happened between them. They didn't sleep together, she just gave him head, and he's not been able to stop thinking about her ever since. Now, she doesn't think she's good enough for him. She is a curvier woman, and she doesn't think she's good enough for him because of this reason. It's not like a big part of the story, but she doesn't think that somebody like her can be seen with somebody like him because he's an American football player and he's buff and all this lot, and apparently curvy women can't be with guys like that, which is obviously fucking bullshit. Anyway, he comes back home for his brother's graduation for a few weeks, and he ends up going seeing her at her laundromat. Her parents run a laundromat. Is that how you pronounce it? We just call them what, I don't know what we call them over here, to be honest. But her parents run, I think we call them the same thing, I've just never said it out loud. Her parents run a laundromat, and she sort of works there, and she's working on her own sort of clothing line as well. She wants to do her own thing, but she lives above the laundromat. And he goes to a party in the hope that she's going to be there, but she isn't. He only goes there to go and see her. She isn't there, so he goes to the laundromat with some liquor, hence liquor and laundry, and story ensues from there. A romance ensues, and I just loved this. I thought it was fantastic. It was so good, and I highly recommend. Again, this was for the Black Romance Book Club, so it was really, really good. 4 out of 5 stars, highly recommend. Then I read Real Men Knit by Kwana Jackson. This was so good. This is following 4 adoptive brothers. Basically, their adoptive mother dies, and that's what kind of the opening that we come into. So only 2 of them are actually blood related brothers. The otherwise they are not. They're just adoptive brothers. And postman. And we are following them sort of going through. Their mum runs a knitting shop, and we're following them trying to go through the motions of what they should do with the knitting shop. One of the youngest brother wants to keep the shop going, and he wants to make something of it because it's been struggling for a while and they're in a lot of debt with it. The other brothers have like real jobs. The youngest brother is a bit of a bum and he just likes to drink and sleep around. The eldest brother works, I can't remember the names of all the brothers. The eldest brother works, I think he's like a lawyer or something. The other 2 brothers who are actually brothers, they are a fireman and a dancer, and then the youngest brother, he doesn't do a great deal of anything. He's in and out of jobs like fiddler's elbow. And then there is a young girl called Kerry who works at the shop. She's the same age as the youngest brother, but she's been going to that shop since she was a kid, and she's been pretty close to the youngest brother for a while now, and she's always had a crush on him, and she sort of agrees, even though she's just graduated and she should be looking for another job, she sort of agrees to help them try and keep the knitting shop afloat until they can get more help, and then she'll go and get another job. And yeah, a romance ensues. It's just really, really cute. I had a really good time with it. I loved seeing the personalities of all the different brothers and seeing how they sort of grow. Like, the growth within this book is amazing. The character growth is incredible, and I highly recommend picking it up. It's very, very good indeed. Really enjoy it. I really need to get a move on with this because we're already like 40 minutes, probably 50 minutes in. So the next book that I read was Confessions of a Bookseller by Sean Bythell. I love this. It's really, really good. If you've read The Diary of a Bookseller, you'll really enjoy this. But if you haven't read Diary of a Bookseller, I highly recommend picking it up. It's so good. Basically, Sean runs a bookshop in Scotland in a town called Wigtown called The Bookshop. And these are just stories that he's written down of things that happen within the bookshop, whether it be a phone call or a customer that comes in asking really strange questions. One of them, it's not word for word verbatim, but one of them is where a customer comes in saying that they are reading Dracula for their book club this month, but she can't remember what he's written. These are just some of the things that are mentioned in this book specifically, but also in The Diary of a Bookseller. I just had a really good time with this. I feel like this one I gave The Diary of a Bookseller 5 stars. I gave this one 4. This kind of follows Sean a bit more in his personal life, and it goes into his personal life a bit more, and I did enjoy that. I think just the novelty in general, I still really enjoyed this, which is why I gave it 4 stars, but it didn't get 5 because the novelty of what actually was happening are sort of worn off, you know, because it was already in the first book, if that makes any sense. This is just basically like an extension of the first book. But there are more confessions in here, so Sean sort of does go more into his personal life a little bit. Probably there are a couple of times where he goes into his political ideals as well a little bit. So there is a lot more going on in here where you get a bit more of Sean's personal life out of it than you do in Diary of a Bookseller. So I really enjoyed this. It was good. I highly recommend picking this up. I had a great time with it. Then I read Kingdom of Copper, which is the second in the David Bard trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. This is following a girl called Nahri, who basically in the first book, The City of Brass, in the first book, The City of Brass, Nahri is basically kind of like a doctor, if you like, but she doesn't believe the sort of bullshit essentially that she's pushing, and she ends up accidentally letting out a djinn and called Dara, who then basically says to her, you are not who you think you are, and you need to come with me to Daevabad to find out who you are. And find out the truth about who you are. And in this story she comes across finding out that she has magic and things like that. She sort of broadens her horizons, and this is set in Cairo in Egypt, and I just love the world building in this. We're also following Prince Ali, who is one of the princes of Daevabad, and I just loved this story. This is obviously the second one. I can't tell you too much about what happens in this one, but it's really, really good, and I love this trilogy. It's fastly becoming one of my favourite trilogies. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I gave I gave The City of Brass 4. I've given The Kingdom of Copper 4.5, and I'm highly anticipating giving The Empire of Gold 5 stars. It's going to be on my October TBR, so yeah, I can't wait to pick that one up. But I gave this 4.5 stars. It was fantastic. Highly recommend picking this trilogy up if you haven't done so already. Then I read Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. This is fantastic. This is a Cinderella retelling essentially, that's kind of not, if that makes it, well, it is. Basically, we have Cinderella found Prince Charming 200 years ago, but the story is over now. However, for the girls of this town, the story isn't over. They have to recite the story daily, and then every year they go to a ball where they are picked by men. They have 3 chances of being picked by men, and if they aren't picked, they are forfeit, which means they are either killed or they have to then work in the castle for the king, who is a bit of a bastard basically. However, this takes the Cinderella story and flips it completely on its head, and I will never look at that original story the same way again. I swear to God, this did incredible. I've got chills thinking about it. This did incredible things. I loved this story. It's fantastic, and what it did to the original Cinderella story is just amazing. I've just never known anything like it before in my life. It's just so good. I love the writing. Kaylin's writing is fantastic. I'll pick up anything else that she writes in the future. She's just incredible, and I read this as part of a Tandem read along, so thanks to Tandem and Bloomsbury again for sending me a copy of this. But I highly recommend picking this up. I can't shout about this enough. It's definitely going to be in my top 10, probably top 5 of the year. I love this so much. 5 out of 5 stars. It's fantastic. Then I read Wizards of Wands Knock 3 Times by Cressida Cowell. This is the 3rd in the Wizards of Wands series, following Zah, who is a wizard, and Wish, who is a warrior. Growing up, these two are supposed to hate each other, but Zah hasn't come into his magic, and he wants to try and track down a witch so that he can take her magic. However, witches use black magic, and Zah doesn't believe this, but an adventure ensues in which Zah and Wish are trying to get hold of the witch's magic, but then try and banish it, and this just continues on with that story. I love this story so much. I read this because I do have an e-arc of the next one in the series. I think it's the final one in the series, and the final one comes out, I actually think it's the middle of September, so yeah, Wizards of Wands Never and Forever, it comes out very, very soon. But I have been listening to these on audio, and David Tennant narrates these. Highly recommend listening to them on audio. Follow along with the book if you can, because like I said, like I've just shown, it's got illustrations and stuff. But David Tennant's narration is fantastic. My favourite character of the whole book is Squeeze Juice, who is just the most adorable little thing, and I'm just obsessed with it. It's so good. It's going to be really weird reading the 4th one without the audio. It doesn't come out till next year, so I can't really wait for the audio to come out. But I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was so good. Then I read Dark Lover by Jay Ward. That's the switch, isn't it, from middle grade to a very steamy adult fantasy. So yeah, this is a adult fantasy that's very steamy. We are following a vampire called Wrath, who basically he's in the Black Dagger Brotherhood, and he is kind of like the king of his race, and he doesn't want to be though. He kind of reluctantly is the king. He doesn't sort of rule like he should do, and basically one of his brothers, Darius, wants him to kind of see his daughter, Darius's daughter, Beth, through her transition. She's half human, half vampire, and he wants Wrath to see her through her transition because he is the only living purebred left on the planet, purebred vampire, and because she's half-breed, there's no guarantee she'll make it through her transition. So he's asked Wrath whether or not he will do it. Wrath has said no, and then Darius very, very quickly in this book is killed. It's not a secret. And he's very, very quickly killed at the beginning of this book, and Wrath feels a bit guilty then, and he ends up kind of just looking into who Beth is as a person, as whether or not he wants to help her, and romance ensues. It just kind of follows them then sort of going through the process of Beth going through her transition. She doesn't even know about vampires. She doesn't know who her dad is. She's no idea that her dad was a vampire, and she doesn't even know that they're actually a thing. So it goes through the process of her finding this out. It goes through the process of her finding out she's half vampire, half human, and then through her transition, and all along their romance, and then a story that's going on in the background that I think is going to sort of span the series essentially, because this is the first in a series, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is like, you know, actual, like, literal trash, but it's so freaking good. It's the best kind of trash, like the kind of trash you really need in your life when you're just looking for something that's easy to read, smutty, and has vampires in it. Like, I don't know what more you want from a book, to be perfectly honest. It's just so good. Then I read Thejumbies by Tracy Baptiste. This is a middle grade following a young girl called Corinne, and she has been brought up being told all her life that there are Thejumbies in the forest and she shouldn't go in there because these Thejumbies are bad people and things like that. But very quickly we find out that there is a Thejumbi amidst her people outside of the forest, and this Thejumbi wants to know about Corinne and her father more for reasons that are revealed in the book, and this goes on to just kind of follow Corinne going through the motions of that, also making new friends. And yeah, it's a really, really good book. There's a lot going on in here and I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to continue on with this series. My lovely friend Tracy bought me the next one in the series, which is Rise of the Thejumbies. Look at this cover. How beautiful is that? So I am excited to continue on with the series, and yeah, it's really, really good. I highly recommend it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Such a good middle grade. Recommend picking it up. Then I read Clockwork Prince. This is the next to last book. Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. This is the second in the Infernal Devices trilogy. Good lord, this book hit me like a ton of bricks. I gave the first one 5 stars. I've given this one 5 stars. This is a bigger 5 stars than the first 5 stars, and this is following Tessa, Will and Jem, who Will and Jem are shadow hunters, and Tessa is, I'm trying to think whether or not you know what she is. Let's not tell you what she is. She is something else. This is part of the Shadowhunter universe, and I just love this series so much. There's a love triangle in this series, so as I mentioned before, I don't mind love triangles where there is no relationship sort of, you know, solidified before the love triangle kicks in. This is one where we have 3 characters and the love triangle, it starts at the beginning basically of their meeting. So this series is going to break me. I am scared to death for Clockwork Princess, which is on my September TBR. I am so worried. I know that Connor's recently finished it and it broke him, so I'm so scared. I know that Becca said that the Clockwork Princess broke her as well, so I'm really, really worried. I'm nervous. I'm excited to continue on with the series and find out what happens to these characters. But yeah, I'm hoping to finish that in September so that I can move on to Chain of Gold, which I'm doing as a buddy read with my friend Tilly in October, which follows the children from this series, which obviously at the moment I don't know whose kids they will be. I haven't read the back of the Chain of Gold book, so I don't know who specifically we're following. 5 out of 5 stars, go pick it up. Then the final book that I read, I started on Sunday night, which was the second to last day of August, and finished with 20 minutes to go of Monday of the last day of August. So that was Rapsonic by Laura Thalassa, I think that's how you pronounce that. This is book 1 in a series, the Bargainer series, and fuck, this book was so good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I loved this. Basically, Bobby has been smashing her way through this series off the back of the recommendation of Becca, who's read Rapsonic, but I don't think she's read the rest in the series. And Bobby sort of smashed her way through the series, and then she was shouting at me on Twitter about it the other day, and it got in my head, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I decided to pick it up. Because why the fuck not? So we're following Callie and we're following the Bargainer. Now, this is told in 2 different timelines. So to start off with, we're following Callie, who is just about she's two weeks shy of her 16th birthday. She's 15 years old, and we start off very, very early on in the book with her being in a situation that she kind of needs to help get herself out of. So this is an urban fantasy, and she is in a situation where she stood over a dead body and she needs some help. She ends up calling the Bargainer, who decides he's going to help her. Basically, he's supposed to he helps people out for, in return, an IOU, in which he can call in a favour at any point and you have to do what he says, essentially. And he decides to help her out, but he decides to help her out at no cost. It's not going to cost her anything because she's a minor, and he feels bad for this situation. He can see what situation she's in and he feels bad. So he helps her out, cleans up her mess, and sends her away to Peel Academy, which is essentially like an elite kind of like magical school for magical people and creatures, essentially. She's a siren, and he sends her away there, but after a couple of days she calls him again, and she just wants companionship. She wants somebody to sort of keep her company, somebody to talk to for a little bit. She's feeling a bit isolated, and she's struggling with the consequences of her actions a little bit. So he comes round and he says to her, right, okay, well, this is going to cost you a IOU, a bargain. She's like, okay, no worries. So then she ends up with this bead of bracelets, basically. Then we jump forward 8 years, and it's sort of the chapters are told starting off with 8 years ago and then present day. So then we jump forward to present day, 8 years, and Callie is obviously 8 years older, and she now has this bracelet right up her arm of about 322 beads, and these are all the IOUs that she's got for the Bargainer. She hasn't heard from him in 7 years. He just disappeared one night, and she hasn't heard from him in 7 years. And then one day she gets home from work and he's waiting for her, and she isn't sure why, but he wants to call in his favours. And the story then follows them sort of calling in her favours and things like that, and following a very slow burn but very steamy romance. And I loved this so much. Becca described this as sort of being the Bargainer, whose name is Des, is kind of like, I can't remember how she described it now, but I would say that he's kind of like Reese, but on speed. So he's like Rhysand from the Akatar series, but hotter. Sorry, Reese, but I love Rhysand. I'm obsessed with Rhysand. He's been my book boyfriend for a while now, but although he did get kind of like bumped a little bit for Zafir from Take a Hint Danny Brown, but now Des is kind of up there as well. So Des is like, okay, so for example, Akatar is like a YA fantasy. This is an adult fantasy, so you know, imagine Rhysand but adult. That's where we're going with this. Yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. I obviously smashed the book in the space of a few hours, because I actually went out on Monday for most of the day with my parents, so I had to smash it out in the evening. But it was fantastic, and I can't wait to continue on with the series. It was so good, and I'm very excited to continue on with this series. It was really, really good and I highly recommend picking it up. Do so, please. And if I can't convince you, go and check out some of Becca's videos, because she probably will, because she did a great job of convincing Bobby, who then convinced me. So yeah, I really want to continue the series now. It's not on my TBR for September, but I want to stick it on anyway. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend picking that up. So those are the 23 books that I read in the month of August. That took a fucking age. I do not want to edit this video at all. This is why I need to do my recent reads videos, like 2 for the month. So I'm parched now. I'm so hungry as well. So not that you care. So I'm gonna go. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please give it a like down below if you have. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. And drop me a red love heart if you get to the end of this video, because I love you guys. And thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I reached 900 subscribers the other day. That's really hard to say. 900 subscribers the other day after uploading my September TBR video, which is Becca's Bookopoly-thon TBR video, and I just cannot believe it. Thank you so much for being here. Hello to new subscribers, and hey to my regular ones. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world. And at the moment that I am sort of filming this, which is on Tuesday, I think I'm on around 940, so I've gained like another 40 followers in the last couple of days, which is just insane. I just can't believe that there is actually a chance I actually might be able to hit 1k by the end of the year, which was my goal for the year. So incredible, amazing. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I shall see you next time. Bye for now.